buenas noches y saludos a este review de Blue Beetle aquí de la Nación de Outlaws. Oh, what's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome to this spoiler review episode of the Blue Beetle here from the
Geek
Amigos. What's up, everyone? So thanks so much for joining us here this afternoon live at 4 p.m. PT here on the West Coast. We are excited to dive in and talk about Blue Beetle, the latest the latest film from the DC universe that is in the middle between the transition from the old DC universe and the new DC universe. The film itself, overall box office wise, not doing the greatest, but James Gunn insisted on the red carpet that Blue Beetle will return, will be in his DCU, and certainly there's a lot of references throughout this movie to a already existing superhero universe, which is what he said his Superman legacy would be about as well. So we are here to talk about it all and break it down. Thanks so much for joining us. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies.
Me llamo Miguel Vogel. Don't have the rest of it. Writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies. Películas y TV shows.
Oh, good. Very good.
Je m'appelle Shannon McClung.
Nope.
Oh, wait, sorry.
Nope.
Wrong language. And this is Shannon McClung. I'm a television actor and an animation writer where you can see season 3 every week on YouTube of Strawberry Shortcake, Berry in the Big City.
El YouTube. Yes, absolutely. Great stuff. Yeah, I love the Strawberry Shortcake stuff. Congratulations, you guys, continuing the Strawberry Shortcake franchise. Control of Netflix for sure. But yeah, we're going to get into all of it. This is a spoiler review. I'll say it again. This is a spoiler review. So if you have not seen it and you don't want anything spoiled, this is not the place to go. Go and see it and come back and hang out with us. But if you have seen it, enjoy. If you don't care, I guess, keep hanging out with us. That's fine with us. And the Streamlabs, the super chats are open. You see the Streamlabs address is pinned in the chats in the description of the video as well. So if you want to send us some stuff, please feel free as we go along. Your thoughts and comments as we go along. All right. This one directed by Angel Manuel Soto, starring XOLO MARIDUEña here, certainly coming out of Cobra Kai and becoming a man in this, playing the role of Jaime Reyes, who is the third Blue Beetle in the history of Blue Beetles, arguably the fourth if you want to throw in the original Blue Beetle before DC Comics even started. But yes, this is the story being told here in this movie, up against Victoria Cord, played by Susan Sarandon, and Carapax, played by Raoul Max Trujillo. The Reyes family comes through, helping Jaime get over this hump and become one with the Scarab. Michael, your overall thoughts here on Blue Beetle?
Well, you know, it's so funny. It's when I had a lot of conversations about this. Like, is it the greatest superhero movie I've ever seen? No, it is not. Is it, you know, as far as the superhero story, is it pretty generic and straight down the line? Yeah. Is some of the comedy a little overly broad? Is some of it a little silly? Yeah. So I don't think everything works. But all that being said, leaning into the Latino family and the Latin heritage, the amazing cast, his family, XOLO doing an amazing job as Jaime Reyes. There was a charm to all of these characters that has been significantly absent in not just recent DC movies, but recent Marvel movies too. So I think the specificity of this movie, leaning into the things they lean into, this was the first time in a long time that I just sat in a theater and just had a good time. Like, I always, in the back of my head, I'm going to be like, oh, this story moment didn't work. This was a little overly broad, and we can dive into those as we get into the specifics. But overall, I was in a good mood leaving, and the people that I went the people that I was in the theater with, by and large, all came out, and some big superhero people, some kind of more casual superhero people, and everyone was like, that was fun. And the audience seemed really on board. We actually were talking about this when we came out. When I saw Flash opening weekend in at the Grove here in LA, you could have heard a pin drop in that whole movie, and not in the parts that you want to hear a pin drop. Like, all the big cameos, all the big like comedy moments, like, that audience was like dead. they were not feeling that movie. And this audience in Blue Beetle was having a great time. Loved Nana, loved everybody, loved the Reyes family. So I was charmed by this movie. Even though I don't think it's perfect, I don't think it like knocks everything out of the water. It was really, really fun. I really liked it. And I really want to see more of Jaime Reyes and his family.
Yeah, certainly, the first Latino-led superhero film from a big name studio here, right at the tail end of the old DCU. We were going to get a Batgirl that was also going to be female-led. We were going to get more going on in the DC universe, and we had Blue Beetle, which originally had been an HBO Max property, and then they turned it into a theatrical film halfway through the shooting. So, Shannon, your thoughts overall on this Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle that they brought out here from DC and Warner Brothers?
I mean, like Vogel said, I thought it was a delight. I mean, I think the first half of that movie is a little rocky. I think once they find their footing, it's really, really fun. George Lopez, I think, is so funny. I think he does such a great job. XOLO MARIDUEña, I mean, yeah, you really hope that he, along with the character, you hope that he makes that transition over to the James Gunn verse, because he did such a strong job. There's a few casting things that I have issue with. One of them is our antagonist. But overall, I thought it was really, really fun. And again, going into this, like we talked about this on our last show about expectations. Going into The Flash, those expectations were so high. It had to have been a hell of a movie to reach those expectations, and it was not a hell of a movie and soar way under the bar. It was sort of like, okay, we'll see what happens, and it was a blast. I mean, my wife and I saw it on a Sunday morning, and we had such a good time. And even though we saw it at 9 a.m., it was in a very crowded theater with a very enthusiastic audience. So you hope that even though the box office maybe was not what they had wanted, that they would have liked to have had more, hopefully this will sprout some beetle legs and keep moving.
Yeah, I kind of want to counter the box office thing real quick, because I mean, like, the fact that it even made $25 million, considering how I think there have been 6 DC movies in a row that have underperformed or flopped at the box office. So the fact that this came out is essentially the soft opening of the James Gunn DC verse and made $25 million. I think there should be a little bit of credit given to the film that it was able to get as many people into the theater and word of mouth, and people go to see it over and over again because of it. Would I have liked people to show up at higher numbers? Of course, who wouldn't? But I don't want to just consign this to the trash heap and add this to the pile of DC movies that didn't do well, because this is actually a good movie. I really enjoyed this film. I've seen it twice now. I've laughed all through the film. Yes. Are there some chunky dialogue or clunky dialogue rather in a couple of moments? Yes. Did they split the focus on the villains a little bit? Yes. And does the overall villain thing work? Not 100% for me, but the family is so strong. The performances are so strong. The joy you get and the fun, as Michael pointed out, that you feel as you're watching this movie, it just comes through out of its pores. It does well in spite of the issues it might have. It has you feeling good about this family and loving this family despite any issues you might have or shortcomings of the film. And I think that speaks volumes to the performances, to Angel Manuel Soto's direction, which I think is really good in the film and very confident, and Gareth Donat Alcázar's script, which I thought worked really well for the most part, even though, yes, Michael, you're correct. It's not stuff we haven't seen before. A female voice talking to you in the suit. That's essentially Friday from Iron Man, a thing going inside of them, a little bit of body horror aspect to it all. We've seen all that. But the uniqueness of the family, that's something we haven't seen. With a family who is not a queen or a king carrying on a heritage or an estranged father. This is a normal who's got mystical powers. This is a normal, regular family who is dealing with this situation and trying to make the best of it. But the love for their children, and especially Jaime, is what helps them overcome any of the complications and obstacles and challenges they deal with. And I think that's, for me in the Latin community, there is so much here that I resonated with and that touched me. But I think overall universal, I think the story is really powerful as well in what it ends up telling you the message, which is family is stronger than any singular pursuit for money or greed, right, or control of the world as we have it. But let's move on to Jaime Reyes' story. Michael, you're very familiar with Jaime Reyes in the comic books. How did you feel that they adapted this story, and how did you feel how XOLO MARIDUEñA did, bringing Jaime Reyes to life? We're not in El Paso. We're on El Paso Street, but we're in Palmeras. What did you think about the overall story they told here about Jaime Reyes?
Well, so one of the things, we've talked a lot about how a lot of it felt very sort of straight down the line, like we've seen it before. Palmera City's great.
Yeah.
Like, it's great. Like, I have not seen a city like that. And I think kind of, I think I was reading some articles with the director and some other people and said that, in the comics, like, Jaime lives in El Paso, Texas, but that Batman has Gotham City, Flash has Central City, Supes has Metropolis. So giving Jaime kind of his own kind of unique city was something they wanted to do. And I think it worked great. I think having a city that was very much the haves and the have-nots, that you have this like futuristic looking side of the city that almost looks like Metropolis. It looks like the Las Vegas version of Metropolis. And then you have Jaime and his family living in the area that is the have-nots,
right? And
saying that they're going to live there until, Cord Industries and those people want to like knock down their buildings and like build more shops. And you're like, yeah, okay, I get what this is a very specific thing that we are talking about. The idea of gentrification, the idea of sort of the people living in a certain area that they've built up. You were mentioning, Elemental and how it how Elemental started small and like kept going, and they kind of hope that Blue Beetle does the same thing. Yeah. But I think also Elemental sort of dropped the ball on telling a really interesting immigrant story. And here, they fully went for it, and I think it really worked for them. And I think it worked in the location. I think XOLO MARIDUEñA. I think he did a fantastic job. I think he does a nice job in Cobra Kai. Yeah. But I don't think he's always the strongest actor in Cobra Kai. And I think he really stepped up to the plate in this movie. I mean, one of the things that I've always loved about the Jaime Reyes version of Blue Beetle in the DC comics is, in a lot of ways, he kind of is the DC answer to Spider-Man. He is this younger hero who's figuring out how to hero. He's quippy, he's really enjoying being a hero. There's a lot of fun with him and his characters. And I think they really tapped into that here. I mean, you can see this version of Blue Beetle hanging out with a Batman or a Superman, and you can kind of already see how he would act, like him kind of fanboying, him wanting to impress, him having these amazing powers but not fully having them figured out yet. So I think that they did a really good job. I think, and when we're talking about like comic book accuracy, I also think the way that they looped in the Dan Garrett stuff, and particularly the Ted Kord stuff. Yeah. If you are an older comics fan who grew up reading Justice League International, who loved Ted Kord and Booster Gold, like, I think you had a big smile on your face for parts of this. Like, seeing them go into Ted Kord's, Beetle Cave, and it's the cheesier, sillier, less high-tech version of the Bat Cave. You're like, yeah, you got Ted Kord right, and Ted Kord wasn't even really in this movie. So I think they had a lot of love for what's been done in the comics, and I think they did it really, really well. I think they did it really authentically, and it just all kind of charmed me and gave me a smile. Like seeing the Reyes family get into Ted Kord's Blue Beetle ship, whatever you call that thing, and fly it around, and like that was just comic book silliness at its best on the big screen. Yeah.
I saw some people in the chat, and I totally respect that point of view. They're like, well, the Ms. Marvel show had a family that was regular or whatever. Yeah, but they weren't actively involved in the mission like they are in this film. You don't see a Nana whipping out essentially a space-age machine gun to handle business and move her grandson's butt behind her so she can protect him. I mean, those little things make the difference. And I get the comparisons, obviously, but I think this family is much more proactive in this particular situation. I think that made it unique and not in any way better, just unique in how it approaches this story for sure. Yeah.
But I do think you are right. I mean, I think the difference between the Reyes family and the Khan family is the Reyes family like fucking went and rescued Jaime. Yeah. But I do think the fact that we have these two younger superheroes, one in the Marvel universe, one in the DC universe. Yeah. Both coming from a very specific ethnic background that both have like strong family dynamics to them. Yeah. And both stories where the family does find out about, like, we don't play the secret identity thing. Like, both families find out about what's going on, and both families support. You're right. The Reyes family supports more actively, for sure. But I think the Khans and the Reyes are a really great example of sort of a modern day take on superheroing, where we no longer keep secrets from our family. We no longer have our family as an obstacle that prevents us from superheroing. Our family finds out about it, and we derive strength from our family, that they support us in what we're doing, which I think for both Kamala Khan and Jaime Reyes is really, really strong.
So you're saying that we're now entering a new age of superheroes, where if you come out with something, your family actually supports you as you embrace this. Really interesting. Shannon, your thoughts on how they handled the Jaime Reyes story in this movie compared to the comics, and everything that went on with him in the Scarab and where it took him to, and everything it led to by the end. How did you feel about it?
I mean, again, a big fan. I mean, the Cobra Kai comparison, is impossible, just because that's where audiences by and large were introduced to XOLO MARIDUEñA. I always thought I thought he was stronger more than Vogel did, because his weaknesses in that show are not him. That is that show. No, there are some people who love Cobra Kai, but that show is not good. Especially the more seasons it gets more ridiculous. But he was always a really, really strong performer and a really, really grounding force in a show that is incredibly broad. Yeah. So putting him in this, it was kind of a natural fit. It was interesting how Vogel thought it was sort of Vegas meets Metropolis. I got like South Beach meets Metropolis.
Oh, I totally got Miami. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I mean, it's like those bright neon colors. It was just so full of life. And giving Jaime Palmera City isn't just giving it to Jaime, it's giving it to Blue Beetle. Because everyone knows, like we saw George Lopez remembered who the Blue Beetle was. It's like, yeah, this was like our version of Batman. This guy was great. Yeah. So I thought XOLO MARIDUEñA did such a strong job. And yeah, I mean, there were many times, especially towards the latter half of the film, that my wife had to put her hand on my thigh because I was starting to lose it a little bit. The dynamic that they nailed between Jaime and his dad just brought me to tears. Yep. And like just watching the conversations that they got to have, like I think the family was about 90% there. Mom didn't get to do a ton. Nana was fantastic. I didn't love Milagra's comedy. I thought a lot of it landed like a lead balloon. I thought I didn't think she was funny at all.
Wow.
Okay. But once you get to that big moment in the middle, you see the dramatic chops that she has. And it's like, okay, that really works. So, and again, she's a younger performer. And so it's like, okay, not everyone is going to nail kind of awkward comedy. Like really good actors can elevate bad comedic writing. And that's not to say that the writing was bad. It was just, again, that first move, the setup of everything was just a little clunky. Yeah. But he was great. And watching not just his dynamic with his dad, but also with the Scarab, with Kajida. That was like the Venom that you want to see. Yeah. It was just so much fun. And, sort of the comparison to Spider-Man about, you could see this guy hanging out with Batman. You could see this guy hanging out with Wonder Woman and Superman. To me, what XOLO MARIDUEñA does is what Ezra Miller struggles with, is he makes it seem real. Like Ezra Miller had a couple of nice scenes in The Flash, but overall the performance was just kind of all over the place. Whereas XOLO MARIDUEñA, I thought, was just talking. And I think that's what you need. Yeah. That's what you need in this, is someone who just knows how to have a conversation.
Yeah, I echo both of your positive comments about Xolo's performance. I was really blown away by that. Because like you, Shannon, I watched Cobra Kai, but there's not a lot of strong acting going on in that show. I mean, it's a fun show. It's great it's great 80s nostalgia for a guy like me. That was my teenage years watching Karate Kid. But so it's fun to go back and revisit that and see it all. But there's not a lot of strong acting. Xolo, I think, moving further and further away, being less and less in Cobra Kai, was, I feel like, on purpose. Like I think he knows, like, I've got bigger ideas, bigger things I want to do. I'm going to tell you that right now. After what I saw him in this movie, I don't think anything's out of the realm of possibility for this guy down the road. I mean, if you can have Justin Timberlake playing a serial killer in that Reptile film, I'll be goddamned if Xolo can't be getting roles like that are interesting, layered, and nuanced to play and complex as well. Because what he showed in this movie was so interesting. I mean, the beginning with him where he is like, the aspirational son. I know that feeling being the firstborn of a Latino family. Like, you got to go to college. You got to get that degree. Your father didn't do that. Your mother didn't do that. You've got to do that. There's that pressure. And then the dreams of wanting more, the dreams of sitting there going, I'm in this small town, but I want what those people have. I aspire to some level of notoriety or greatness or fame or money or wealth or whatever. But then 5 years later, nothing's happened because you can't get out of this situation sometimes, because it's systemic sometimes that you just can't get out of it. So what happens? You get a little stroke of luck. You stumble into a situation. You get a scarab attached to your body. And then you go through all this. And I think Xolo did a really great job with every one of those scenes. Mike, you make the Spider-Man reference so perfectly. Him reacting to everything, that it's taking control of him. And he's like, I don't know what to do. But his instincts, like Terminator 2, he doesn't want to kill. The scarab wants to kill at first. He doesn't. It's not in his nature until later, obviously. And it's the scarab that ironically has to pull him back from wanting to kill Carapax because of him blaming him essentially for the death of his father and, of course, Victoria Court as well. So I like that we go with this progression. But Xolo has these great scenes. Shannon, you made an excellent point. The great scenes with his father, like when he's out there and they're having a drink after he can't sleep and he's stressed out. And I've had those drinks with my dad out there late at night on the porch. It's a great thing. A lot of fathers and sons have had those moments out there, regardless of ethnicity. So there's a universal thing to that. And yes, were they hanging a lantern on the fact that he was going to die? Yes, but I still liked it for sure. And then later on, him and Rudy, I mean, we're going to get to George Lopez, but him and Rudy having those conversations, every family has that black sheep of the family. Rudy is skeptical of the world, and we think initially he's like a bit of a stereotype. He's got a big old truck called Taco and all this shit. But then later you find out he's actually a technical genius. He's really smart at this stuff, and he feels that he's an outcast in his own family. And it's Jaime who's like, no, man, we love you. We respect you. We accept you for who you are. So there's a strength in that I thought was really great to see in this movie, and that Xolo was bringing in every one of his roles, or every one of his moments rather. And the chemistry, it wasn't 100% there, but I thought in certain moments with Bruna Marquezine as Jenny Cord, they had some nice chemistry. And I think they're actually dating in real life, but they had some nice chemistry in those moments.
The scene they had in the bedroom.
Yes. Talking about her dad.
That was great. And that was all at that point, I was like, yep, I'm on board. Like, you might not have chemistry throughout, but like that scene got me there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at the end, when he is having that struggle with wanting to kill Carapax, that is all over Xolo's face. The anger, the frustration, the revenge because of the pain of the loss of his father is so powerful. And then when we see the scene with him and his dad earlier, when they're on that astral plane, Black Panther-like, having that conversation in essentially a Dia de los Muertos situation, it is so awesome to see him embrace that and change and make that switch and embrace the scarab, become one with the scarab. And so I really enjoyed that 100% here with Jaime's performance. Let's move on to the, let's see, we've already been talking about a little bit, but let's really hammer at home the family involved in here. Let's give some names for the actors involved. Belissa Escobed plays Milagro Reyes. You've got George Lopez as Rudy, Uncle Rudy. Damián Alcázar plays Alberto. Elpidia Carrill plays Rocio, who is his mom. And acting royalty, the queen, Adriana Barraz, plays Nana. So Shannon, your thoughts overall on the family and how they worked throughout the movie, how they were introduced, the roles they played, and then slowly but surely how the film made them a central part of the movie here in helping to, as Michael said, rescue Jaime.
They were all wonderful. Even Belissa Escobed, who I didn't love everything. I didn't love her comedy. I still thought she had a lot of nice moments. Just watching that dynamic. The beginning of that movie is he's coming down that escalator and asks the guy, how do I look? You look like you're about 6 figures in debt. I was like, that is a great line. And then you juxtapose that with the family, that they clearly have this news that they have to give him at some point, but they don't want to do it. But you just see the pride in Alberto's and Rocio's faces, and this is the first Reyes that graduated from college. And then this was actually a very funny line when Milagro says, and the last one's being like, I'm not doing this, this. Right. The introduction of George Lopez, holy crap, so funny about he's not getting out of the truck because Big Brother's everywhere. He was just such a well-defined character, and I'm curious how much of that is the writing, how much of that is George Lopez. But either way, it was just a perfect marriage between those two. Nana was super funny. In the trailers, I wasn't sure how that was gonna go because I'm like, this looks like it could be kind of a sillier moment. The lead up to her doing it, when you find out about her revolutionary past, I'm like, that is brilliant. Yeah. And then she has just some really heart-wrenching moments as well when she's like, trying not to get emotional right now. Of course. Like, we're not gonna cry now. We'll cry later.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll definitely.
Apparently, you did not take Nana's advice.
I wasn't in the story. But that beautiful moment at the end, like after they've rescued Jaime, once the day is won, watching them come together, like that was beautiful. And Nana bringing in Jenny as well, like it's like, that was just so well done. And if they do get to do it, like, I don't know if this is going to get a sequel. Hopefully we see the family again, but I hope we get to see more of his mom, because we don't get a ton with her, but what we do get with her, I think is really, really good. And just, again, watching the dynamic of that family was just beautiful.
Yeah. You talk about the mom. She does get that one scene where she gets to essentially shake Jaime up, be like, okay, this is the moment. Step it up, and I'm gonna talk to the scarab. I'm telling you right now, figure this shit out, because we gotta get past this. So you're not a lot of time, because the dad really was the focus. Their relationship was the focus, and rightfully so because of what happens to him. But a little more with the mom would have been nice to see as well. Michael, your thoughts on how all these actors did with these roles, how these roles were kind of stood out on their own, and then how they worked together as a unit through the rest of the movie.
I thought all the actors were fantastic. I mean, I think this is the strength of the movie. Like XOLO Maridueña, and then all of these actors, they're the anchor that makes this movie work. If they don't work, the movie falls apart. Echoing a lot of what Shannon said, just from a storytelling standpoint, they really nail it off the bat. Like Shannon said, like, before you even see the reunion with Jaime, you're like, okay, there's something wrong, there's something going on, and then really quickly you learn about, no job, losing the house. Like, they just pile it on, so the stakes right away are very, very high for Jaime, which is great. George Lopez's Rudy is one of those characters that when he first came on screen, you're like, oh, this is a big swing. This is a big swing. This could go a bunch of ways, guys. I don't know. And then they just, every single thing that they did with him, even when he was like, I have a device that is going to shut down all the security at Cord Industries. And I'm like, okay, that's a little bit of, I don't know. But then they did it, and Jaime calls him, the Mexican Doc Brown. And I'm like, and I'm literally in the theater, I'm like, all right, touche. Don't judge a book by its cover. Mexican Doc Brown, got it. And then him just knowing how to do everything when they got into Ted Cord's sort of Beetle cave. Like, they established these things about him, and then they just kept hitting those things. And then, like Shannon said, like him having this whole, I'm the black sheep of the family, I'm the loser that sleeps on his brother's couch. I was like, man, they did it. They really, really did it. Damián Alcázar?
Yeah, Damián Alcázar, the dad,
Dad, literally beautiful. Like, to John's point, we've all had those conversations with our dads, sitting outside, having a drink, talking about life. I did not see that he was dying coming.
Oh, really?
Like, it happened, and I'm like, you motherfuckers. And then, man, to Shannon's point, like that speech that Nana gave about, like, we don't have time for this shit right now. Like, Jaime's in trouble. We are going to mourn, but we are strong people and we deal with this. Like, it was just like, they really nailed that family vibe and those little individual emotional moments, even though, like I said, this main superhero story was like nothing that like blew you out of the water. The way this specific family dealt with a relatively generic superhero story was what made it magic. Now, the one thing I will say is that like at the beginning of the movie, it was a little broad in the comedy. And by which I mean, like, this is one of those things that bothers me. Like, your eldest son, who you love, came home, got a beetle scarab in his body, and ran off to go figure out what was going on. And then you all start dancing because you're talking about your favorite soap opera. Like there was moments where you played the comedy in a moment where I felt the comedy wasn't exactly right. Like, no, you should be pretty stressed out at this moment. So I was a little bit unsure, but they kept finding their footing. And once they got into the more emotional beats, I feel like they really nailed it so hard that you're like, all right, those a couple moments at the beginning that threw me off. That's okay, because you nailed the stuff that really mattered, to the point at which I will say that the Alberto Reyes, Jaime Reyes relationship, I wish that Henry Cavill and Kevin Costner had a little bit of that, because they really could have used it. Because this is how you do that. This was done correctly in a way that Kevin Costner's Pa Kent showing up in Batman versus Superman was done less well. Just saying.
Okay. And also, Damián Alcázar, like mild-mannered comic nerd, said it in the chat. The dad was from Narcos. He was awesome. He's also in an Apple Plus show called Acapulco, where he plays a kind of similar character to this, in that he's a father trying to connect with a son, and the show is again delightful, and he's wonderful in it.
Yeah, Eugenio Derbez is the lead in that one. He is a fantastic guy. He was the guy in Coda, who was the music teacher. He is the lead in that show, and it's a great show on Apple TV Plus for sure. All right, so I'm going to go on a little bit because this is my people, man. All right, so let's talk about this. I thought the family was incredible. To see something that I have waited my entire life to see on screen in this format, a superhero format, to have it come across so well with the little nuances. I mean, I thought it was hilarious how they kept referencing the Mexican soap opera, which is a real Mexican soap opera that really that has existed, and comparing it to Jaime, I thought was really well done. Each one of the characters was their own thing. And the father was a different kind of Latin father. He wasn't the standard typical macho father that you would normally see. He was so loving of his son, so caring for his son. He was having those heart issues. He didn't want to bother his son with it. The mom is the one that also respects her husband, but also wants to get certain things across, but also wants to protect her child. You see that, and they avoided what sometimes happens in Latino families, which is the son gets more revered than the daughter. You have that kind of sexism or that occurs in Latin families. By not having Milagro want to do the same things as Jamie or Jaime, you weren't setting up conflict here where where they chose one over the other. Even though she makes a little snide crack somewhere where they're in the rich house after she takes her shit, that you know, oh, you're the sheep or the one they love the most or whatever. All siblings are going to have that, but I think they avoided that. And that was really smart by the writing and the characterization that they did when they're sitting on the roof, having that conversation where she wants to walk her own path, he wants to walk her own path, his own path, and both parents love them for it, I thought was really, really great. And then Nana, of course, I mean, my God, Adriana Barraz, who I got to interview for Rambo Last Blood, she was so good here as such a badass in this film. And they did a smart job of slowly rolling that out, right? Slowly rolling that out. She did the grandmother things. My grandmother lived with us for a while in Virginia. All those things are the same. Waking up to Vicks Vapor Rub, give me a fucking break. That is so Latino, for fuck's sake. That fixes everything. It's like Purple Drank, you know, it fixes everything. Or the Windex spray in the My Big Fat Greek Wedding. That Vicks Vapor Rub moment was so authentic. And so there was so much that they did that were broad generalizations of the Latino culture, but also there were specific things that they did that I thought was really great. The way they mixed both of those to in essence bring out a really strong Latin family that stood on its own. And Shannon, you bring up an excellent point. When the father dies, which is one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen in a superhero movie, and Belissa Escobed just crumples. Milagro crumples at the loss of her father, and Jaime is screaming his head off. Imagine that you cannot stop this thing that is happening to your father because you're being yanked away, the devastation that must go through your body, especially when you've seen the relationship that they've had in the movie up until that point. It is heartbreaking, but it is Nana who does not disrespect the emotions that are going on. She just says, we will have time to cry later. Right now, we have to eat it up and we have to focus on Jaime. And Michael, I know you make a good point here about this, and normally you would think a family would react to this, but I also think about this, and I think they make a reference to it later on when we're talking about the Carapax story. Latinos go through a lot of shit to come across the border. They endure a lot of shit in their own home countries, in certain countries, and the stuff they overcome. So, like, a body horror thing isn't necessarily something that they're going to overall freak out about. So that's my counter to that they've seen some shit in the Latino world, and sometimes you got to be like, you know what, fuck it, we got to deal with it, we got to get over it and get to it. And I know the dad kept saying over and over again, this is the Reyes family. We will find a way to overcome. We will find a way to come together. So you make a good point, Mikey. I'm just saying the counter or the devil's being the devil's advocate. Some Latinos who have crossed the border have seen a lot of shit in their own country, some horrible stuff. Do the research on what goes on in some of these countries when these dictators come to power. And so a body horror situation, maybe not as devastating as you might think. Well, and in the end, he does come back and they're fine and they figure it out as it goes along. But again, I get your point. I'm just saying maybe there was a thinking that they didn't want to overdo it because these people have seen some shit crossing the border, especially Nana, who is a revolutionary. So, so just throwing it out there. All right. Let's take a quick break and then we'll jump into some more here with this review of Blue Beetle. Keep sending in your Streamlabs and Super Chats and we'll answer some of them on the other side of this break right after this. Do 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 do. Good stuff, man. We got 175 of you watching us right now. Thanks for joining us. Please hit a like on this video. If you're watching later, leave a comment down below as well as hitting a like and subscribe to the channel right now if you haven't subscribed to the channel. Michael, I'm going to ask you, let's get into one more thing. I'm going to start with you, Michael, and then we'll get to some of these Streamlabs and Super Chats. Michael, the villain here, all right, two villains in essence. We have Victoria Cord and Susan Sarandon. We have Raoul Max Trujillo playing Carapax, who is a villain of the first Blue Beetle, brought all the way up to here to be a villain for Jaime Reyes, made Latino, and having that connection to La Escuela de los Americas, which is something that's a really hardcore connection to making a film like this. And Victoria essentially standing in for the military-industrial complex in a lot of Latin American countries from the American point of view. So your thoughts overall, how did the villain stuff work for you? Did it let you down? Was it good? What did you think about how they orchestrated that in this movie?
I think the villain stuff was serviceable. Like, it was fine. Like, you sort of had your actual big bad, which is Victoria Cord, Susan Sarandon, and then you had your muscle CG big bad. Like, we had the big bad who Jaime actually needs to fight. I think that the choice they made to sort of have Jaime spare Carapax at the end and then Carapax take care of Victoria Cord was a nice way to wrap things up. But overall, I think that Susan Sarandon was a little mustache twirly. Although I definitely loved her casual racism. Like, I think that having this rich, privileged white lady going around with her casual, like, calling everybody Esteban or whatever she was doing, like, it was
Sanchez.
Like that.
Sanchez.
Yeah. that worked really great. But I think that, like, she was just so broadly evil that she was less interesting, and then Carapax was sort of so one note. Yeah. That he was less interesting. So that's kind of what I mean when you get into the more generic superhero stuff. You're kind of like, okay, like Victoria Cord kind of taking over after Ted Cord disappeared. Cool idea. Victoria Cord like wanting to like make weapons like Tony Stark's dad did. You're like, cool. Loved bringing the OMAC stuff into it from the comics. Like that was all really, there was a lot of good ideas there. I just think the execution was just so kind of superhero 101 and it wasn't elevated. But then I feel like all the family stuff and all that like kind of made up for it. Yeah. So, like it did its job, but it wasn't bowling me over. Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways I compare like I was talking to somebody about this who was like, oh, DC has a lot to live up to. I'm like, look, this is DC if James Gunn is to be believed, and this is sort of the soft launch of his universe, this is like early Marvel stuff, and I compare it a lot to like Thor or Iron Man. Like Iron Man, the villain ain't that great. Thor, the villain, Loki is not nearly as good in Thor 1 as he is in later Marvel stuff. So, you had a lot of things in early on with Marvel where they were really establishing the hero side of things, and Marvel's big critique until you got a little bit later on was the villains were kind of lame. So I will say for this one, like, I love the hero, I love the family, I love the tone and the vibe, I love the location. The heroes were a little lame. I mean, the villains were a little lame.
Fair enough. Shannon, your thoughts overall on Victoria Cord and Carapax essentially playing dual villains in this movie?
Well, with Carapax, I mean, I think where you get to at the end, the backstory that you get of him is really interesting. And if there had been a way to sprinkle some of that in at the beginning, like if part of the thing that Victoria has installed in him has taken away some of his memories, maybe, so he doesn't remember that, he had this loving family that Victoria Cord took away from him. I think there was some interesting possibilities there. And I thought Raoul Max Trujillo did a great job. I mean, with what he was being given. Yeah. And the idea of a former hero's sister who was passed over as the villain, I think that works. I just think it was Susan Sarandon's performance that was just kind of so over the top. I mean, this is kind of like the perfect example of Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park saying, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Just because you can get Susan Sarandon doesn't mean you should. She was just so, like, every time she was on screen, I was looking over at my wife like, my God, like this woman at one point was Hollywood royalty. And now it's like, what? Whoa, what happened? It was almost like they did not tell her what kind of movie this was, or maybe at this point in her career, she was just kind of like, you can try to direct her, but she's essentially going to do her thing. But I think the role itself, I think there was actually a lot of potential in that role. It just didn't get executed as a result of the actor you cast.
Okay, Mike, any defense of Susan Sarandon there in that moment, or should we?
No, I mean, look, I love Susan Sarandon. I think she's great. I think, and I don't know if it was the role was written abroad and she did that, or if she was told to go broad, or to Shannon's point, you just can't really tell Susan Sarandon what to do and she went broad, but she definitely didn't quite feel like she was in exactly the same movie. But I mean, I do think it's not all her. Like, the way the role was written is just so like, I'm going to have this big speech about how we're going to really do this thing, and then I'm going to say, kill the person. And like, I get what they were going for from this person that was, there's better examples of, like, I really do like a character that, and I think given kind of a lot of the things they were doing, I love the idea of sort of this rich, privileged person trying to convince themselves that they're doing good. And that they're doing a really great thing, but really they're just horrible underneath. They're horrible and selfish and greedy. And that's clearly kind of what they were going for. But because it was all turned up to like 11, you were like, okay, this is a lot. And I think a subtler performance of that, playing this whole like, I'm a really nice, caring, amazing person. And I'm doing good for the world. But like, also like, just kill this person. Like, like there was a way to play that all that was really nice. And I think she didn't quite nail it. Yeah,
I'll agree with that. It's not that I thought she did a bad job. I'm not going to go as far as Shannon did, but I do feel like she wasn't quite the right choice for the role. Originally, it was going to be Sharon Stone, which I don't know why you cast her as a villain again in another DC film after Catwoman. But that being said, it would have been interesting seeing Sharon's approach to this, because if anyone loves a chew-up scenery, it's Sharon Stone. And I feel like she would have brought a little more menace, a little more believable evilness to the role, because I just really didn't think Susan Sarandon was scary in any way, shape, or form. And I thought it was weird to give her some kind of redemptive moment, like, I got passed over because I was a woman. And like, normally it's like, okay, that's a bad thing. We should address that. But putting it in the villain story just seemed like a weird thing on so many levels. And then finding out that even though she got passed over, she's still a super evil person. When we get the flashbacks with Carapax, I thought was a confusing thing. To me, the mistake they made was splitting your focus in two villains. I think we just needed one villain and a non-speaking henchman, or henchman that didn't do much, or just one villain, period, and make it the person. It would have been interesting to have Raoul Max Trujillo as the main villain here, because as we saw with Black Panther, having a black villain and a black hero can still work because they expose some of the things that go on in the culture, some of the points of views and different approaches. And certainly we saw with Carapax, when he has that flashback at the end, there is sympathy for him. I mean, I got emotional when he grabs Victoria and drags her into the fire, essentially killing himself so they cannot be manipulated by the political American military industrial complex all over again. Because when they show the flashback to Las Escuelas de las Americas, that is a well-known actual historical thing that existed for numerous decades, where they trained hundreds of thousands of people in these Latin American countries to become assassins and murderers and killers and dictators. Noriega came out of the Escuelas de las Americas. That's how long this thing has been around. So there was a real cultural thing that I thought Angel Manuel Soto was trying to do with this character. But I agree with you guys. I think there should have been more fleshed out with him and more fleshed out with her, so that we got to understand a little bit more, and that their villainy is more a tragedy right all the way through, rather than just right at the end for Carapax, and no tragedy at all for Victoria, it seems like. So I think there could have been more done here. Splitting the focus, though, I think was just too confusing in what you were trying to do. But I still like Raoul. In the moments he has with Jaime, when he is kicking Jaime's ass and he is standing over him and all that, that is scary as fuck when you see that stuff happen, which is why when the turn happens at the end, it really means something when you see him flashback to how Victoria was in essence the person who killed his mom, killed his village, all that kind of stuff, and turned him into this machine, this killing machine, you know?
I do think, though, I mean, to that point, I think had you played a little bit more, because I think what Shannon says is kind of implied. Like Susan Sarandon says to him at the end, Victoria Cord says, "But don't you remember everything I've done for you?" And he says, "I do now." So I think it is sort of implied that whatever he believed, like he didn't fully remember everything either. And I think had you made that a little bit more a part of the story, that he was like this believer in Victoria Cord, that he was like, "You saved me, you did," like he believed some version of something and was really loyal to her. Like Bane and Talia in Dark Knight Rises loyal, and then found all this stuff out and it really shattered him. He would have had more to play, because I do think he did a really nice job with what he was given. Yes. But I think if he had more to play, it would have helped. And the other thing, this isn't really their performances, but it falls into the villain territory, is there was also a little bit of a muddiness to the entire OMAC Scarab plot. Like, yeah,
let's put a pin in that, because I want to swing back to that, Michael. Definitely. The next thing I want to ask real quick, and then we'll get to Streamlabs Super Chats. Shannon, go to you first. We're in the Cord family here. How did you feel about Bruna Marquezine's performance, and how did you feel about how Jenny Cord was used in the movie, and how she, I don't know, how she was a part of the plot here? What did you think about her role in the film?
I think she is not the strongest actor. Okay. I think that scene that she has in the Cord mansion with Jaime, where they're about to kiss, like, I think that's probably the strongest work that she does. But the rest of it, it's just a little forced. It just does not come off as authentic. It doesn't come off as believable. And again, I think when you have so many actors that are kind of knocking it out of the park, like XOLO MARIDUEña, like Nana, like George Lopez, to stand out in that, you really got to bring your A game. And I don't think that is what happened. The idea that Ted Cord has a daughter that is battling with her aunt over her father's company, in terms of the story, I thought that worked really well. And if you were able to continue this franchise, having Jaime Reyes have a connection to Ted Cord that is beyond the Scarab, I'm like, thematically, I think that's really, really nice.
Yeah, I mean, she's a Brazilian actress. She's a very, very, very experienced as an actress on the Brazilian side of things. Maybe there was something lost in the translation here coming in. It's not everybody can make that jump, you know, and so maybe there was something missing. But I mean, to be fair, to be compared to all those great actors who are just bringing it, maybe it was a bit too much. I agree. I thought she was a bit miscast, wasn't as strong as she needed to be, but certainly that scene, talking about her father Ted and all of that was really strong. What do you think, Mike, overall of how Jenny Cord was used in the film and Bruna Marquezine's performance?
I mean, echoing what you guys said, I think the idea of Jenny Cord is great. As an addition to sort of the mythology that Jaime Reyes has a crush on Ted Kord's daughter and she's missing her dad and like she knows everything that her dad did and she's fighting with the aunt and now she has control of Kord Industries. Like that's all really cool stuff. It's all great. She's sort of a net zero for me. Like she's like as opposed to like where Susan Sarandon's sort of like, I think you kind of you went in the wrong direction. And whereas the family and XOLO MARIDUEña, like kind of you're like, okay, you nailed it. She was like, okay, you didn't bowl me over, but you didn't take me out.
Yeah.
Like you're fine. Like if they do continue on with these characters and Jaime and his family get to continue on into this bigger DC universe and Jenny Kord runs Kord Industries out of Palmera City, like I'm good. Yeah. I'm fine. I don't feel like she's like a big issue, but I don't know that she's ever going to bowl me over either.
Yeah, I don't think we need to continue with that storyline, to be honest. It was nice that they had a little relationship, but we've seen in numerous superhero movies where the superheroes kind of moves on. I mean, what in Back to the Future, we moved on to somebody else, right? Karate Kid.
No. In Back to the Future, we did not move on to anybody else.
Well, Karate Kid, to make that connection, apparently him and Elizabeth Shue couldn't make it work after the first movie. So it can happen. You know?
But from a world building standpoint, and we'll get to the post credit sequences later, but like Ted Kord ain't dead.
You're right. That's true.
And Ted Kord is the original Blue Beetle, and you want Ted Kord and Jaime to hang out, and so you can't not. Oh, remember my daughter? She's at summer school. She's not in the movie. She's in summer school. You're like, no, like she and I guess that's what I mean. Like what Shannon's saying is like Jenny Kord as a concept, is a strong concept that you should keep. Jenny Kord running her dad's company and then finding out that her dad is alive somewhere and going to Jaime and saying, hey, we got to go save my dad is a strong idea. Like there are strong ideas. Like, and that's what I mean. Like as an actress, I don't think that she was so weak that you should dump all the Jenny Kord stuff because you don't need it anymore. Okay. I think that she was solid enough that the Jenny Kord, Ted Kord, all those connections are good enough ideas that I would be more willing to keep her than not.
Ted Lasso Kord, right? Because that was Jason Sudeikis in the photo. I don't care what anybody says. Christina B saying Jenny Kord seemed to be from the Katie Holmes School of Love Interests. Yikes. Yikes.
Oof. I don't know that she was quite on that level. Her face didn't look melting.
Yeah, give her a little bit. Oh, Mike. All right. There.
You know, at the end, I don't know why. Like, Katie Holmes is a good-looking person, but at the end of Batman Begins, she shows up and it looks like her face is like kind of like, oh, hey, Bruce. Like, it's weird.
That knowledge of your childhood friend being a superhero, it's a lot of weight.
I can mess with you. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's hit some of these Streamlabs and Super Chats before we go to another break and then jump into the stuff that Michael was alluding to with the Scarab and the OMAC stuff for sure. And maybe that'll come up in one of these questions. We shall see. Francisco Lopez says, as a Latino to a Dominican parent, happy that Blue Beetle is good. I love it. It was fun and funny with awesome action sequences, great moments with the characters and family. Yeah, I think we echo your sentiments.
100% on board with that.
Absolutely. Derek says the movie was good. I don't think great, but we got to be honest. WB and Gunn allowed this movie to be set aflame. DCU character, but DCEU movie. Anyone outside of geekdom even understand that? The main actor is a star. The stigma attached to this was not the movie's fault. I think they've tarnished the DC brand, and we still have an Aquaman. Superman movie isn't recovering this. Regular audiences have clearly given up. All right, Derek goes on for a bit, so I'm going to read them all. Keep Beetle, but rest. Can we all agree to reset this universe entirely? Gunn won't do that, but everything that has the stigma of old needs to go, including Peacemaker, I think is what he's trying to say. Wash it and don't put another movie out except for Superman. Also, can we not put DC and Marvel in the same conversations? They're light years apart, both financially and story-wise. Same genre, but so different. The food truck that's DC Roca is on one wheel with a bad engine and desanitation rating. I don't know what that means. Love the show, guys. And Roca, I always admire how you fight for the things you care about. Really says something about your character and the friends you surround yourself with. Oh, that's I'm always lucky to have such great friends. I'll have to watch later at work right now.
That I agree with.
Yes, I know you do. Gentlemen, your thoughts on Derek's rant here, which is very kind to send as many super chats as he did, please.
So I think a couple things. One, we do this a lot where we say, oh, audiences don't care. Audiences are confused. audiences just want to go see a good movie.
Yep.
It's the geeks. It's the geeks who get really what is part of what universe and whatever. Now, you absolutely reach a level where the entire audience is confused, and that's not a good place. But like DC has a moment, like everyone's talking about, well, we need to reset this, reset that. Blue Beetle sits in a very unique position. Now, it doesn't actually have any ties to anything before it. Like the Flash, Black Adam with Henry Cavill showing up, every other thing is sort of like kind of peripherally tied to all of the original DCEU stuff. Blue Beetle mentions characters that would exist in both universes, but it doesn't have like a Jason Momoa cameo or Ezra Miller running in to kind of establish it. So it can sort of sit in either world. And even though the box office isn't great, you know, hopefully, like I said, hopefully it pulls an Elemental, and because of good word of mouth, more people go see it, and it actually does pretty well. Also, let's all keep in mind that Blue Beetle's budget is not the Flash's budget.
That's true.
Like, Blue Beetle doesn't need to knock it out of the park and make $1 billion to be profitable. Blue Beetle can be profitable at a much lower rate than most of the superhero movies that have come out. So let's just see where it goes. But even if it doesn't, if James Gunn is going to continue and keep Jaime Reyes, I don't think this is going to be some massively confusing thing to audiences the way that some people are saying it is. On the other, like, not comparing DC to Marvel, look, DC and Marvel have been compared to each other for 60 years, and we're not stopping now. And there have been times that Marvel comics have been significantly better than DC comics. And then there's been times that DC comics have been significantly better than Marvel comics. And so this competition of who's doing better and which superheroes are killing it and which aren't, it's not stopping anytime soon. We're going to keep doing it. We're going to continue doing it. And honestly, it keeps both of them in check. Marvel, I don't think is worried about DC at the moment, but I think general interest in Superman and what James Gunn is going to do is slowly creeping while Marvel is slowly kind of declining in people's interest. So they're definitely keeping an eye on that.
It's weird. Both of them seem to be stumbling strongly in different ways here, but Gunn seems to have at least the Gunn thing is at least a possibility, an out maybe in all of this. And
the whole DC thing is interesting because yes, DC's absolutely stumbling right now with the stuff that they had already had in process. We haven't hit the Gunn DC unit. We talk a lot about it, and we talk a lot about these movies that we're already in process and we're all coming out, and what's in and what's out and what are they doing, and they're very purposefully being very tight-lipped about what is and what isn't, because you know, like, they're already worried that they're going to take a bath on Aquaman 2. If they come out and say Jason Momoa is not in the new DC universe, then they're really going to take a bath on it.
Take a bath.
So
DC
I think
DC is stumbling to a finish line that they decided on. They are stumbling, sure, but they've also said, like, we're going to get to December and then we're out of this race for the next 18 months. So it's not quite the same. Do I think Marvel is worried about them? No, because if DC does great, generating interest in the superhero genre helps both companies. It's not a haha, we finally got you. I think Marvel would love it if DC starts to do well. Maybe not too well, not better than them, but they would love it if DC starts to do well, because across the industry, people are talking about superhero fatigue, superhero malaise, and to sort of reignite those fires is something that helps both companies.
Can you help me understand this one? What is the food truck that's DC? Roca is on one wheel.
You remember you talked about DC being a food, like Marvel was like a fine restaurant that had the really good china, and the DC food truck was out front. You remember that?
I do now. Yeah.
And said food truck has a D rating.
Oof, a D
versus
rating.
An A or a B. I mean, come on. Are you going to go to a food truck with a B rating? You were going to do an about face and find another option.
We just started watching The Bear this week, first season.
Oh,
yes,
so
chef.
good.
It's first of all,
yes, chef.
I'd have watched this show months ago if I knew they were half an hour each. I just never knew. I didn't know. I thought they were hour long. And to me, I was
wait
like 10
till
hours.
you get to season 2. You are gonna lose your Shit.
How many episodes are you in right now?
We're
Rocha?
5 episodes in season 1.
Okay.
But I'm bringing this up because when they get that C rating and the reaction that everybody has in that 3rd episode is hilarious. So yeah, I see you. Jay Scott of Real says, love the shirt, Michael. There it is. XOLO was great as Jaime, and coming out of the movie, I really want to see Ted Kord and Dan Garrett with 2 T's, but I do think it was forgettable. I've dwelled on Strays more since seeing both of those movies. Ironically, Shannon went to see Strays today. Shannon, would you dwell on Strays more than Blue Beetle? Would you agree with that?
No.
Okay.
No, I did enjoy Strays. I thought Strays was really funny. But no, I would have dwelled. All right, Rocha's camera just.
I knew it was going at some point.
Well,
Bang!
lost Rocha.
Bang! That's why I have this one.
But no, I have not dwelled on Strays more. Strays is very, very funny. But no, I have definitely thought about Blue Beetle more than it.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, look, I think obviously, given our critique, it's been pretty clear. There are parts of Blue Beetle that are absolutely forgettable. Like,
yes,
I think when we talk about some of the villain stuff, you're like, yeah, okay, who cares? But I don't think that the Reyes family was forgettable. I think like they've really stuck with me.
Okay. Yeah, fair. I agree with that. As I fix my new webcam there, Francisco Lopez says, will we see Jaime Reyes again and Ted Kord maybe in the Booster Gold show? Yeah, a lot of people were saying maybe we'll see Blue Beetle pop up in the Booster Gold show. Also, a lot of people suggesting because Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle was in Batman Brave and the Bold in the comics, we might see him pop up in Batman Brave and the Bold. What do you guys think?
I think both of those are really true. Like, I think I told somebody this, like, we stayed, we watched the post-credit stuff, which we'll get into more detail in a bit, but like this whole Ted Kord thing. And one of our friends was like, why are they even doing this? And I was like, they're making a Booster Gold show.
Yeah.
And if you are a fan of Booster Gold, one of the things you like the most about Booster Gold is Booster Gold and Ted Kord Blue Beetle running around together, getting into shenanigans. Like the two of them are like the Abbott and Costello world's finest. I mean, it's like, that's like, it's great. And so now that you have this world, and again, like it's one of these things that with Blue Beetle, like, yes, obviously Warner Brothers is looking at the box office. Obviously it would be great if Blue Beetle blew it out of the water and made all this money, and Blue Beetle was a huge hit, and like the Latino community was happy and DC fans were happy and everybody's like, good. But even regardless of all of that, establishing Ted Kord is missing, and that Kord Industries is in Palmera City, and Jaime Reyes has the Scarab, and knowing that there's a Booster Gold series coming down the line, as a architect of a universe, you go, okay, in my toy box, this is a really good playset, and there's some good characters here. So box office be damned, I'm keeping these pieces, and I'm going to continue to use them because they are going to work to my advantage to build a universe. And I think that's really, like, I came out of Blue Beetle being like, there's some good ideas here. Keep this shit. It's going to be good for you in the long run.
Fair enough. Shannon, your thoughts on this? Would you want to see it?
I would want to see it, and I will just point to that's a seasoned showrunner right there, folks.
Yeah,
delivering a pitch in the room.
Good point. Eric says, haven't seen the movie yet. Going this week. Rocha, I love your passion for this film. Question: are we in the end of the superhero renaissance? LVGB.
I don't think we are.
Okay,
we might be.
Right.
It's possible, but I don't think we are. I think that what's happening right now is if you look at Marvel phases 1, 2, and 3, more or less, like, forget DC, the wild rodeo that's been DC movies, but like the Marvel universe kind of gave us up to Endgame almost like this perfect sort of traditional superhero story.
Yeah.
They did what the comics did. They brought the characters together. They built to a giant climax, the big final sort of arc. They did it. It was great. Now, they were trying different things in phase 4. Some worked, some didn't. We've introduced the multiverse. We've gotten very complicated. DC is like, all right, we're calling quits, white flag, we're rebooting everything. So now we're getting into this phase where both Marvel and DC, to survive, are going to have to take some big swings and do things really differently. And I think we're going to get into this era I might be wrong, but I think we're going to get into this era of like superhero experimentation.
Yeah.
Where we take the genre that has sort of been established over the past decade and start to mess around with it, start to try new things, start to push characters in different. We're already seeing it in things like The Boys on Amazon Prime, you know, like
absolutely,
or even Invincible and what they do. Like, so like we're already seeing some of it, but I think we're going to see more of that. And that will sort of give this resurgence to we're back into it again because it's interesting. Then we're going to get saturated again. Then I don't think that we're out of it until we start getting like, we're parodying superhero movies. Like once a bunch of movies come out where we're just straight up making fun of superhero movies and how stupid the genre is. Yeah. And we all really respond to those movies and say, yep, we've been watching this for 25 years. We're fucking done too. That's where I think it's finally going to end. I think we have a couple more iterations until we get there.
Fair enough. Shannon, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, we could be. I mean, it only takes a few more bad things before audiences start to kind of turn away. But at the same time, all we need is a couple of good things in a row, and everybody's back in. Like the movie going, the movie going public is not fickle. Yeah. I mean, if you give them a couple of good things, they'll be back in.
Yeah. Nor is the geek community. We all hated Book of Boba Fett.
That's true.
We were mixed on Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Mandalorian season 3 was a little bit of a mess. And I am literally counting the minutes for this spoiler review because I got to go get things ready because I got 2 episodes of Ahsoka to watch tonight, and I'm very excited. So the geek community will turn on a dime.
Very true. All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll jump into some more stuff here, talking about Blue Beetle and also answering your Streamlabs Super Chats right after this. Do 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 do. I don't know that. Do you know that one, Michael? I don't. Sounds familiar.
I've been humming the Beatles.
Oh, good one. We've got a bunch of Streamlabs I want to get to, but let's answer a couple and then we'll get into the Scarab Omax stuff here. Jim Fan says Travis Earl says off topic, but Zack Snyder unveiled the trailer for his latest triumph, Rebel Moon. Latest triumph. Quick thoughts. Rate your excitement on a scale of super excited to the most excited you've ever been for a movie in your life. Wow, Travis. Respect the game for your love for Zack Snyder. My trailer reaction is up. I loved how can I say this? I enjoyed the visuals of the trailer, but it was super derivative. I saw Gladiator, Star Wars, Dune. Just off the top of my head, those are the ones that I can remember seeing. And the singing, all that stuff we've seen before. And then out of nowhere, rock music. That being said, I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not a fan of the cast he's put together for this one. So it may be one of these ones that looks great, but does not quite live up to the hype because the emotional beats don't work and the performances aren't that great. So, gentlemen, did you guys get a chance to see this Rebel Moon trailer? Thoughts?
I have not seen it yet. Okay. I will put my excitement as very curious.
Michael?
I mean, I watched the trailer. There's about 15 movies in that trailer.
Fair enough.
And I think knowing how Zack Snyder likes to tell stories, we're going to get all 15 of them at the same time. It was a lot. Like, it was like, all right, okay, there's some griffins and a robot, and okay, there's this character who's the chosen one, but then this guy is a bad guy, but then this is a good guy, but was a bad guy. Okay, I think this, and then, all right, the chosen one, and okay, and it was all the things that I have come to expect in a Zack Snyder movie, so I don't think I will be surprised when I watch it.
Fair enough.
And to be fair, and if you are a giant Zack Snyder fan who is on a scale of super excited to the greatest movie ever, and you like what Zack Snyder does, I think your brain's going to explode when you watch this movie, and you're going to think it's the greatest thing you've ever seen in your life. I will say, I'm intrigued about watching it, and I cannot wait for all of us to discuss it when it comes out.
That's a fair point. I like these 2 comments real quick. All in the Game says, teaser trailer that was almost 4 minutes long. That's typical Zack Snyder. And Smithy says, I was confused. Where was Riddick? Great comment there. What's the next one here real quick? Jim Fan says, Blue Beetle is similar to Ms. Marvel, where I loved the main character, family, and cultural aspects, but just as Ms. Marvel, the superhero aspects didn't work fully. Villains were generic and the story was okay. However, I do hope Jaime continues in the DCU. Certainly, I think we all feel that way. So, yeah. And Hill Nellum says, whereas I enjoyed moments of The Flash, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie from beginning to end. Oh, in comparison, I only enjoyed moments of The Flash. I enjoyed this movie from beginning to end. My theater was not full, but the vibe I got from everyone around me in the theater was nothing but positive. Keep doing what y'all do, Geek Buddies. Oh, thanks.
I mean, I will say, not even, like I said the same thing. Like, my theater was very on board with this movie. My theater was very on board with Nana. But even with that, like, the general vibe on Twitter, and if anybody disagrees with me, let me know. Like, there's obviously people that don't like it and whatever, and people are reporting on the box office. But whereas you think about people's reactions to Black Adam on Twitter, people's reaction to Shazam 2 on Twitter, certainly people's reactions to The Flash on Twitter. Oof. And then all I'm seeing on my feed is people being like, guys, go support this movie. It's really fun. I had a great time. Like, I actually really enjoyed myself. Like, the general vibe around this movie is very different than what the vibe that DC and Warner Brothers have been getting on their superhero movies for a while now. Yeah. And I think that that's something that they pay attention to as much as they're paying attention to the box office.
Fair point. All right, let's jump into the Scarab OMAC stuff here, Mike. We know the OMAC stuff from the comics. Certainly, we've seen it done before. Here, the One-Man Army Corps. They're a brainchild of Victoria Cord here in the film, and it's a bunch of humans who apparently were injured in war that are augmented to become cyborgs. Essentially, the super soldiers is what she was doing, the super soldier serum in a weird, different way here to take over things. And then the Scarab, we find out from the opening of the movie that the Scarab is from another planet. We know it's from the Reach in the comics and in Young Justice, I think. And so we know all about that, but it's presented in a certain way. We find out there's two previous Blue Beetles, but only Jaime has been able to be touched by the Scarab or controlled by the Scarab, so to speak. So what did you think overall of how they handled the OMAC storyline and weaved it into this one and the Scarab stuff here in this film as well?
So I think the idea of using the OMAC stuff was great. Like, we're using the OMAC concept, but we're gonna build these super soldiers, and we need the Scarab to do it, and blah blah blah. That was really good. It just got a little, so like, you needed the Scarab, to run your OMAC program, but your main villain, who was wearing the prototype, seemed to be doing just fine without the Scarab. But then when he got the Scarab, he leveled up. So cool. But then you needed to reverse engineer the Scarab technology so that you could use it in the OMACs. But when we saw the OMACs down in the basement in the thing, they looked like they were ready to go. Like, the confusion of how what we need the Scarab for specifically. Do the OMACs work with the Scarab or without it? And it was one of those have your cake and eat it too, because simplest thing is we need the Scarab to run the OMAC program.
Right.
But if you do that, you don't really have a villain to fight Jaime throughout the movie because he doesn't have a suit that works. Like, unless they made him like a straight badass who then got the OMAC suit at the end. So I think because they wanted to have this villain that could go toe to toe with Jaime, which makes sense. It got a little bit like I got to the end. I'm like, okay, so wait. Do you really need the Scarab, or do you just want the Scarab to make the suits cooler? Like, because if you just want the Scarab to make the suits cooler, like, just go run the OMAC program without it and leave everybody the fuck alone. Like, so like it got a little muddy in there, which I thought was another kind of ding on the supervillain plot. As far as the Scarab, I thought they did a great job. I love the Scarab. I think I think the way they reinvented it when they kind of rebooted Blue Beetle with Jaime Reyes was super smart. I think the Reach, again, in a bigger world building standpoint, unless you are a comic book fan or a Young Justice fan, you're not super familiar with the Reach. They are an A+ alien threat. Like, having the Reach show up in the DC universe and Jaime being stuck in the middle of it is an A+ way to go with your new DC universe and like build into something that we haven't seen before. I'm super into it. I'm super down. I hope they continue on with it. My one complaint, and it's not even a complaint. I think they did a good job. Like, the Scarab talking to Jaime was great. The Scarab wanting to kill and then learning from Jaime not to kill, totally all tracked and made sense. this might be because I'm a fan of Young Justice. Like, I like the Scarab to be a little bit more bloodthirsty. Like, I think they dropped some comedy on the table of like the like play the Scarab even more like Arnold in Terminator 2. Like, the Scarab is just like, let me kill this person. I want to kill this person. I'm going to kill, like, I can literally slice and dice this person. And Jaime being like, whoa, this is intense. And then kind of having like literally that, we don't do that. Like, but why not? I'm designed to kill. It's like, maybe we don't do it. And then the Scarab kind of coming around to Jaime's way at the end. Again, it's exactly what they did. So it's not like they did it wrong. Right. I think that having the Scarab be a bit more bloodthirsty might have, like, they would have gotten even more comedy out of it. But other than that, it was pretty true to the comic. It was really well done. And like I said, I think the Scarab and the Reach and the kind of alien side of things, like, could build into some really, really cool stuff if they played their cards right.
Okay. Shannon, your thoughts overall on how they used the OMAC storyline and the Scarab stuff here in the film?
I mean, kind of like what Vogel said, like everything that they had did work, but I think making it more like the Murder Scarab from Young Justice does get you a little more comedy, and it also makes that moment at the end where the Scarab doesn't let Jaime kill Carapax. It makes that moment land a little harder, because it's not just growth for Jaime, it's growth for the Scarab as well. And that's really the interesting thing about Jaime's Blue Beetle, especially the way they did it in Young Justice, is the back and forth that he has with this, sentient, alien thing on his back. With the OMACs, the moment that Susan Sarandon's like, we need this to make the OMAC program work, I'm like, well, he got a bunch of armor just now, so do you? But it was one of those kind of 90s movies things where I was kind of like, okay, I mean, this is what we have to do to get to the next thing. Okay, that's fine. I do think there was probably a way to finesse it a little bit more, that Carapax could have had some sort of, cybernetic upgrade, but make it way more noticeable when the Scarab does kind of take over. Like, that's when he fully armors up. That's when, instead of actually having that OMAC face, I thought he was going to have something similar again to Young Justice, like Black Beetle. I thought he was going to have some more Scarab influences in his armor. So the OMACs as a concept are a great thing to use. Who knows if we'll get to them again in the movies. What they did was fine. But yeah, you could see where there was room to plus a lot of the stuff with this particular storyline.
Yeah, I think unfortunately gets wrapped up with the villain storyline, and which wasn't, as we all three of us have said, it wasn't really as fleshed out as it should have been. So the OMAC kind of loses power because it's connected to that situation. Yeah. Where if it had been fleshed out a little bit more, it had been constructed a little bit stronger, then the OMAC is an extension of a strong evil storyline, and that makes it all the more unsettling and scary to think about the idea of arming a populace to arming soldiers, or creating these mind-controlled soldiers to turn on a populace to enforce a powerful person's point of view. Certainly, that's something that has all of a sudden become a possibility in our world, which is scary to think about. And so it's like, this kind of thing could have really had some nice resonance to it overall, but I think they kind of played it safe, didn't 100% commit to it. So the OMAC stuff felt a little bit wasted, even though I thought the special effects of it worked really well. Overall, a little bit wasted. But the Scarab stuff, I agree with both. The Scarab stuff was great. Let's have more of that. And I loved the body horror stuff. Manuel Soto has directed some horror stuff, so to see it work so well in the body horror, I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, that whole sequence was great.
Yeah, that and even though there was like stuff with, that was very similar to Tony and Jarvis and Tony and Friday, I still thought it worked because she was figuring it out as he was figuring it out, how to work together and how to get symbiotic on it. So that by the end, when she pulls him back, that's a real moment. But you make a good point, Shannon. Could have been developed a little bit better, so that moment's even more powerful. I think Mikey, you said that as well, so I agree with that. What about the and remember, this film, halfway through, they decided to make this film a theatrical film, and the budget increased, so we got to see these things that we haven't seen before. So Shannon, I'll go to you first. The Blue Beetle ship was used in this movie. We also went underground and saw the two different Blue Beetle outfits, the original Blue Beetle with Dan Garrett and also Ted Kord's Blue Beetle. What are your thoughts on all of this?
I love it's called the Bug. That is it's just the Bug. That's the name of the ship.
It's not the Night Owl. Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is when Alan Moore wrote Watchmen, Blue Beetle was going to be Night Owl. He wanted to use a bunch of the old Carlton Comics characters.
He did, yeah.
And those were going to be the characters that he was going to use for this story. And then DC was like, no, we don't want you to use those. We're going to do something with them. And that's how he created original characters like Rorschach. Like Rorschach, as you could tell, that was the question.
Right. Yes.
So the bug tech, I mean, that's the fun thing about Ted Kord is he's a less intimidating Batman. I mean, he's an inventor. Some of his stuff is a little sillier. And then you look at the costumes that both he and Dan Garrett wore. I do wonder when that scene was shot, like if it was deeper into the production, if they would have upped that Ted Kord costume a little bit, because that was really like we're just throwing on a cotton jersey here and some goggles. Let's go fight some crime.
I mean, that's pretty much that's the Ted Kord vibe, though. I mean, Ted Kord wasn't killing it with his look.
I saw someone online do a rendering of what Ted Kord could look like in a movie now, like using sort of like looking at what Jaime's outfit is. It's just like, oh wow, that would have been really cool. So I mean, I thought all that stuff was fun.
It would have been really cool. Would it have been Ted Kord?
It was still Ted Kord. It just wasn't 100% cotton. It was still the
right. But I mean, I think
the layout.
Again, like when I read those old Justice League Internationals, like that's what's funny is like Ted Kord's Beetle costume looks like it's 100% cotton. Like he doesn't look like he's wearing Kevlar. He's not like up in his game like Batman. You're like, oh no, you throw that thing in the laundry, man. You wash and dry that thing.
What'd you think about let's move on to let's move on to the post-credit scene, because speaking of Ted Kord, we get Ted Kord. He is we see a picture, and I'll say this, it looks like Jason Sudeikis to me. And we hear him saying, "Tell my daughter I love her," or "Tell Jenny I love her," and that Ted Kord is very much alive. So did we like that? Where are we going with that? Do we enjoy that is an aspect of this? Because I mean, with the Miles Morales, yes, Peter Parker is around, but he's not essentially a two-hander situation. Do you think they're setting up a two-hander situation with Jaime and Ted, and you like that Ted might be coming back in a sequel? Gentlemen, what are your thoughts on that?
I would love it if they did that. I really would love it. And because when you look at like the Flash's post-credit scene, I mean, it didn't really, it was Clooney. It's not the promise of things to come. Knowing that Gunn would have been able to cut that post-credit scene if he had wanted to, I kind of hope that is the implication, is that we are going to get to see Ted Kord, Jaime and Jenny, go off trying to wherever Ted Kord has been or is being kept. That it is like, sort of a rescue mission. I would love to see that. Like I also heard the Sudeikis as Ted Kord rumors, and I was listening really close. I was like, I don't know if that's him, but it would be fun.
Yeah. I don't think they haven't decided. I mean, they did it. They did exactly the way they did it in the first Ant-Man movie with Janet.
Janet Van Dyne. Yeah.
Where you just, they don't have to answer that question right now. This is what they kind of should have done in the Flash, and like everything they did in the Flash, I feel like they did it all wrong. And here I'm like, this is right. You have this very sort of abstract painting of Jenny and her parents that is very broad to the point that you could cast anybody, and you have this staticky image and this voice that we can't place, which leaves the door open to down the road you can cast whoever you. John, are you having an
I'm so sorry.
What is happening on this
is
screen?
Being weird. This is being really weird. I don't know what
if you are only listening to this podcast, I wish you could see John's screen.
I wish you could see what's happening right now. Anyway,
but so I think like they left the door really open. Again, it's a great idea. And I think that it's less the Peter B. Parker, Miles Morales situation, and it's more Scott Lang and Hank Pym.
Yeah.
Like, just because Ted Kord comes back doesn't mean he's going to put on his cotton jersey and go start running around as the Blue Beetle again. Like, maybe Ted Kord comes back and pulls a Hank Pym and kind of like sits in the background. He can supply the tech. He can do a lot of cool stuff, but Jaime is really the hero. So it's very Hank Pym and Scott Lang. It's Bruce Wayne and Terry McGinnis. It's Ted Kord and Jaime Reyes. Like, and I think, again, it's one of those things where when you're looking ahead to one of the things you do that Marvel did really well is they absolutely had a lot of stuff planned.
Yeah.
Like they absolutely from the get-go knew they wanted to do the Avengers, knew they were going to do Infinity Gauntlet. But the magic of the Marvel universe and a connected universe in general is having parts of a plan and then knowing what pieces to pick up along the way. And like I said, everything they established with Palmera City and Jenny Kord and Ted Kord being missing, like these are all really good threads that as you are building this bigger universe of Superman Legacy and Brave and the Bold and all these and Swamp Thing and all these pieces, you're like, well, having Ted Kord and Kord Industries around to like build shit, that's probably good. We should do that.
Yeah.
So I hope to Shannon's point, that end credit sequence would have been very easy for James Gunn to cut.
Yeah.
And the fact that he didn't cut it gives me hope.
Okay. Yeah, I liked it. I think too. I love Ted Kord. So the fact that they were jumping over Ted Kord to introduce Jaime bothered me. And when it was first initially announced, because I love Ted Kord as a character, I got to know Blue Beetle through Justice League International and then went backwards and got to know all the stuff with him. So the fact that Ted's not dead, which I kind of suspected throughout the movie when it reaffirmed it or confirmed it in the post-credit scene, I was like, great, this should be a lot of fun depending on who they cast. The other post-credit scene, which I thought was hilarious, is some more with the animated version of El Chapulín Colorado, which is, for those of you who don't know, that's a Mexican animated series based on a live-action animated series, kind of like when Star Trek went animated after it finished its run. This happened with El Chapulín Colorado, and it's a funny choice because Angel Manuel Soto said he grew up on that animated cartoon when he was a kid, and so he wanted to find a way to weave it in. The fact that it's based on superhero stuff as a kind of a send-up of superhero stuff, and he is based on a species of grasshopper, I think it's just genius to use that in the film. Having Rudy use it to turn the security and mess with the security, and then having it at the end as a post-credit scene, I thought was a nice touch for that overall. And a nice.
Do you know what I really wanted though? Can I give you like my pitch?
Please.
Because like that end credit, like I stayed all the way to the end credits, and I got to that, and I was like, okay, that was cute. Yeah. Here's what would have been the cherry on top. You have that cartoon playing, and we're all laughing, and then all of a sudden it sort of fritzes, and you pull out.
Yeah.
And you're on an alien spacecraft and you see these aliens in shadow looking at it, and they're like, this is where the scarab is? Like, what the fuck? And you just left it and you're like, oh shit. Like, I just wanted to I wanted some kind of reference to the Reach on some level to have been like, oh yeah, bitch, here we go. And I was like, okay, well, that didn't happen, but I still had a good time.
Fair enough.
Do you think if
go ahead.
Jason Sudeikis does play Ted Kord, that when he gets back to the Beetle lair, he puts up a sign that says "Beetle leave"?
Oh man, why? Like, what is your obsession with doing that? Like, why would you do that? Oh my god!
Who hurt you? Ridiculous. Who hurt you?
I know, right? All right, so lesson learned with my webcam, because I got this webcam. It is a tracking webcam, so I've got to turn the tracking off so it doesn't follow me into the nether region, so to speak. So I apologize to anybody who's watching and dealing with my
nobody
stupidity.
Needs to know about your nether regions on
oh hey-oh. How dare you. All right, anyway, let's hit in some of these Streamlabs that have been sent through from people here, and we'll wrap up after we do this. AZ Badfish says, afternoon, gents. I really like this movie a lot. Sure, it has some familiar beats, but how the story plays out is unique and a lot of fun. I lost my dad to a heart attack last December. Oh, AZ, condolences to you, brother. And this movie even made me cry a few times. I will be getting the 4K version of this one for sure. Yeah, we should touch on that. Shannon, you know, I don't think it's a good show without making you cry. So, I mean, like, it was...
Again?
Fair point. That was a tough... I don't know how to turn this fucking thing off. All right, fine. It was a tough situation to have his father pass away in the way that he did. And it was brutal the way he had him pass away. It wasn't just a random heart attack in the grocery store. It was as they were being attacked by Victoria Kord's stormtroopers in essence, and him calling out couldn't handle the chaos of it all, and then ends up collapsing there and dying in front of his family. Heartbreaking as hell. Your thoughts on it, then Michael, right after that, please.
Well, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. They sort of hung a lantern on the fact that he did have a heart condition.
Yes.
Which if they didn't do that, the heart attack is a little bit of a cop-out, because you had to know that he was sick. And and so hanging that lantern was necessary.
Okay.
I also think during that attack, if he gets shot and dies, that's a very different film. Like the way that they took him out was the best way to do it. And also completely heart-wrenching. And that was the moment, like, I knew that heart attack was coming back.
Right.
I didn't know they were going to kill him per se, but as it was happening, it's like, oh no, this is how it goes. And when we get the scene later, which was just absolutely gorgeous. And for anyone that has lost a parent unexpectedly, the fantasy of getting to have that, one last conversation with them, that's something that really obviously hit me very, very deeply. And just the way that they pulled it off. I mean, it was sad. It was joyous at the same time. It was just really they did a really, really good job with this.
Yeah. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it was really, I know that I keep harping on it, making fun of it, but like there is a comparison to be made between the Jonathan Kent, Clark Kent relationship in Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, and this relationship with Jaime and his father in Blue Beetle. And I think that they just sort of nailed it in a very simple way. Like, this wasn't there's a hurricane coming and you could save me, but don't save me. And this whole thing, like, it happened very suddenly. It was very brutal and it was very sad.
Yeah.
And Jaime couldn't do anything about it. And then to just have this beautiful moment, and they set it up earlier in that beautiful scene that they had when they were sitting outside, where it's kind of like, we don't, none of us really know what our purpose is. We're all, that's what we're here to figure out. And like when Jaime is like, well, what's your purpose? And he's like, I'm still trying to figure it out. And it was very sweet. But then you have this moment that was shot beautifully, like just the visual development around this, like being in the house, but then outside in the window, there's just like this field of candles. Like it was so beautifully specific in the way that they did it. And for him to say, I finally figured it out. Like, this is my purpose, that I'm supposed to be right here in this moment with you to tell you that you can do this. And then to have all of the pieces falling apart as his dad disappears and he like jumps and reaches for the Blue Beetle suit. Like, it was just really like, it was heartfelt. It was really simple, but like in the way that you want things to be simple, like simple in its beauty. And just visually kind of real, like, especially for a movie that was sort of just like kind of going to be a max, straight to streaming.
Yeah, right.
This sequence right here, I was like, oh, no, this is well done. Like, this looks good. That CG looked good. It didn't look like the freaking plastic people in The Flash. Like, this was some pretty stuff. So I just thought they handled it really, really, really well. And, the fact that his dad really was, and you said this earlier, John, that his dad kept saying, even when all the Blue Beetle horror body change stuff was happening, he was like, look, we're the Reyes family.
Yeah.
Like we deal with, like, they just did a nice job of setting him up as sort of the heart of their family. And the fact that even after he died, he still got to be the heart for Jaime in that moment when he needed him. Like, I feel like they knocked, like there's a lot of things in this movie that were kind of like, yeah, it was okay. You didn't quite get there with this. This part, I think they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. I agree with that too. And again, I want to reiterate this. The idea of having a different type of Latino father who was not the macho type, not the situation where Jaime had to overcome and the dad had to figure it out and overcome his shit. And they found, no, it was a caring, loving relationship. He was a father who legitimately loved, L-O-V-E, loved his children, loved his wife, loved his mother-in-law. There was genuine love in that house. And so sometimes when we get portrayed in films or in shows, it's not that way. So to see it happen in this film, I thought was a really nice breath of fresh air in the portrayals of it overall. Let's hit some more of these Streamlabs and Super Chats as we get close to the end here. Doug says, I love how films starring superheroes of color feature acting legends from their respective communities. Angela Bassett, Michelle Yeoh, Tony Leung, and the actress playing Nana are prime examples. That's Adriana Barraz, prime examples, giving them more deserved exposure. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's great to see that. I'm sure you gentlemen agree with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah,
and especially with the Nana actress, yeah, as you said, like she's very famous.
Yes,
so
royalty.
Reaching out to those older fans,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously this is a film that's aimed at a young audience, but putting someone like that in there makes those older folks want to come see it.
Yeah, agreed. Mild Man, a comic nerd. Thank you, Mild, for the donation. He says, hey, Geek Buds, hope all is well. I love this movie. I would love to see Blue Beetle and Static Shock work together like they did on Young Justice. Maybe they will do something like Young Justice in the future with a live action movie. Thanks again. Yeah, I mean, Damian and Jaime have stuff in Young Justice. We know Damian is coming. So would the Static Shock situation be possible overall in this DC universe? What do you guys think about this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's sort of the thing, even with the stuff that Gunn has announced. I think they did say that that's not everything. in chapter 1, that there is more stuff coming. So it's kind of blue sky right now in terms of what they're going to show.
Static Shock is just sitting there right for the taking, untapped. I mean, the Milestone comics in general have a bunch of gold that they've always had in the comics, but then Static Shock made that leap to, I mean, I think it was Kids WB at the time, wherever it was on Saturday morning, like Static Shock, there is a generation of kids that grew up loving that show. Like Static Shock is gold for DC, and it's just sitting there. He is waiting in the wings, and they would be dumb if they did not lean into it.
It's a great point. All right, and let's take a quick break. Then we'll finish up with the super chats as we're at past the half-hour mark here, and we'll be right back right after this.
I got nothing.
Like they had 8 years of hits, and like
I know.
I mean, there you go, Shannon. Come on now.
It's really easy from the cheap seats.
My seats are a lot of things, Shannon, but they ain't cheap.
Let's see where I left off. As Trey Wessel said, there are a few things I want more than Peacemaker and Vigilante sitting down at the Reyes family table. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yes, please. Let's make that happen. Peacemaker having to corral his language and then having Nana put Peacemaker in his place. That's comedy gold. Absolutely. So that'd be awesome. Samuel O'Rady, Samuel, says, can we please stop fan casting John Krasinski as every superhero with a movie upcoming? Jensen Ackles should be Batman. Would be perfect.
Oh my gosh, John Krasinski is Ted Kord. Yes.
Oh, I didn't think.
I mean, listen, when those John Krasinski Batman rumors started flying around Twitter this week, I literally wanted to throw my phone out the window. I was like, y'all just gotta stop.
Yeah.
Are you serious? Like that's a thing that happened?
Yeah. People started.
Kalinowski was tweeting about it and said, I guess like some site that has a lot of Batman or some Twitter handle that does post a lot of Batman stuff, like posted a picture of Krasinski, but that didn't say anything. And then everyone else picked it up and said rumors or Batman. Like it's one of those things like Tom Cruise is going to be in Multiverse of Madness as Tony Stark. Like it's something that was just self-generated on Twitter, and Twitter was like, cool, let's run with it. And it was just like, guys, leave Emily Blunt and John Krasinski alone. Let them just do their thing.
Here's the deal at the end of the day. If more fans realize that these sites and these YouTube channels have to generate this kind of buzz so that they maintain their financial level, maybe less people would pay attention to that stuff. And so that stuff would go away. The problem is people quote tweet it, people talk about it because they want to have something to talk about, or they want to believe it, or they want to get enraged about something. But those people put stuff out there knowing it's bullshit just to get traction and likes and quote tweets and all of that. It's unfortunate, man.
Should we start doing it?
Sure.
making shit up? Just
Can
make
you look
shit up?
yourself in the mirror in the morning? I couldn't, but if you
John
want.
Krasinski is Ted Cord. You heard it here first.
Done.
It's happening.
Done.
It's happening.
I've heard Bill Hader as Ted Cord. How about that? Shamir Kelly, I enjoyed the movie so much. This is the first superhero movie I cried in since Endgame. Wow. Belissa's acting when the dad died was incredible. I agree. It got me. Also, Jolo acting during that scene felt so real, knowing he couldn't do anything. Yeah, I mean, I was here when my father died in Virginia, and there is such a just frustration that you feel when you're not there when your father passes. And in a way, what Jaime is going through, the fact that it was even worse, the fact that he actually had to witness it and was unable to console his family or, be there and touch his father's body. There is a massive devastation that comes with that and trauma that I wonder they'll take into other Blue Beetle movies or other Blue Beetle appearances that they do it down the road. But yeah, I thought that was great. What do you guys think about this? What Shamir Kelly had to say? I
mean, I definitely had a good cry in No Way Home with Aunt May.
Oh yeah.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, Alberto Reyes's passing was definitely it was very, very visceral. And then his afterlife sequence also very, very visceral. And yeah, and I thought Belissa Escobed was great in this moment. I mean, this is what turned the performance around for me. I mean, that moment of just hitting the ground, just being taken in, it was just so heart-wrenching. And I thought it was an interesting choice. Like, obviously, you want to subdue your hero, so you've got this claw on him. Yeah. But also, that's very similar to what happens when someone passes. Like, there's nothing you can do to keep this from happening.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, look, we keep saying it, but we all want a superhero movie to be all the things.
Yeah.
Like, it's great when a superhero movie is firing on all cylinders. Spider-Man No Way Home, Into the Spider-Verse, Infinity War and Endgame. Like, just sometimes, like, every once in a while you go to the movie theater and you're like, fuck, man, I'm the best action. I'm crying. The script is great. The actors are killing. It's all the things. But for my money, Blue Beetle didn't fire on all cylinders, but the cylinders that it fired on were the most important ones. And I think this represents that. I think the fact that I came out of that movie loving this family, loving Jaime, and wanting nothing more than to see more of this family and Jaime in the DC universe is ultimately, in the long run, more important than the villain story. Yeah. Now, ideally would have been great if both of them were killing it.
Of course.
Like, it's the same thing that I felt with Miss Marvel. Like, everyone who said it in the chat and everything it's the same thing. Like, Miss Marvel, she was great. The family was great. The villain story was okay. Like, it was there.
Yeah.
But I'm more excited that, like, the Khan family is going to continue on, because the villain story, we're going to bury that and pretend it never happened. We're going to put that one away, but the family and the hero lives on.
Yeah. Agree with that 100%. Aisha Kenya says, what did you think about the death of Dr. Sanchez? I felt that moment was brutal and not needed at all. Yeah. Harvey Guillén here from What We Do in the Shadows fame, Guillermo, playing not Dr. Sanchez, which we find out at the end when he has his defiant moment, saves Jaime there after questioning whether Victoria should be doing the things that she's doing, and then ends up dying at the hands of Carapax after having this inspirational moment. So, gentlemen, was it too far? Was it too brutal? What did you all think?
It was surprising.
Yeah.
Like he was definitely, like, we knew that he was going to die.
Yeah.
The fact that he kind of blew up and you just saw like this blood spatter on the porthole window, that was a little surprising for me. Yeah, that was maybe a little far.
Okay. There was a couple. There was that was a little far, and then, like, when they were in the Beetle going through the courtyard of the castle, and Uncle Rudy just sort of skewered a guard with a leg that kind of stuck on the. I was like, oh, okay, that's a lot for a family-friendly movie. Yeah, the Dr. Sanchez whole storyline, like, they hit the beats that they wanted to hit. Like, she got his name wrong. He clearly was uncomfortable doing his thing, and then he made his big moment. But, like, it really felt like in the script there was probably more to it than that. It felt like there was more there that kind of got cut for time. And yeah, ultimately it was a little, like, it happened and I was like, okay. Yeah. All right. That is, whew.
Yeah.
It's not Peacemaker. This is Blue Beetle. What are we doing? So like it definitely felt a little out of place.
Yeah, I thought the whole usage of Harvey Guillén in the film felt a little out of place. I don't know why you cast a really good actor like that and give such a small role to him and small stuff to do. I think there could have been a lot more explored there.
I think there probably was.
I think there probably was.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
I don't think he takes that role for what it was. I think he took
right.
the role because there probably was more to it. And then whether it was through shooting or through whatever, I think you just like, look, a lot, like you write, like these movie scripts at the beginning, there's a whole bunch of stuff. This is why we get director's cuts, because you have all of these things. And then you do your first cut and you're like, well, this is a lot longer than they're going to let me do. And so you just start slicing anything that doesn't drive the main plot and the hero story forward. And so a lot of these secondary and tertiary character like that, you're like, oh, this is a really nice arc. It parallels Jaime's journey, or it parallels this. You're kind of like, cool. And like, so you sort of can see how this kind of got shrunk down to, he's there at the beginning.
Yeah.
Susan Sarandon gets his name wrong. He loses the scarab. He's there at the end. He helps Jaime. That's his arc. And so you're like, I don't think he would have taken the role if it was just that.
Yeah. I'm sure there was more. You guys make a good point there. Fantastic 314 says, when Trujillo's character, that's Carapax, remembers his mom and how she dies, then tells Jamie to take care of his family, it had me in tears.
Jaime.
Jaime. And
Sean.
I'm so used to being in America. And when he walks to his death and takes Victoria with him was great, I thought. And so, I agree with that. Again, I said that earlier. Like I broke down in that moment. Like I really kind of had, I was in a press screening. I had to kind of hide my tears a little bit because I felt that pain. Just hearing those stories, knowing those stories, being the son of immigrants, hearing the stories of what people go through to come to this country or come to any country, and then having them be defiled by a certain political party because it serves their interests, or become the convenient scapegoat, or have people judge people like this as by the cover without realizing there's more going on. There was a lot here that spoke to me. And I think Soto had a comment about it as well. And I don't know if I copied it, but he said something about it that he wanted that to be a commentary on the military industrial complex, the American military industrial complex, and how it has really damaged and hurt generations of Latino people in these countries, and then vilified them when they've dared to cross the border and try to find a better life for themselves.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is kind of it's a more specific version of what I was saying before, which is his big thing is throughout the movie, he says to Jaime, your family is a weakness. Your family is weakness. Your family is weakness. And I really think had you established earlier on that Victoria Cord was like, your family abandoned you.
Yeah, right. Good
and
point.
I saved you. I did
switch.
this for you. And so, like, if you had this character who, for the whole movie, thought his family abandoned him and that Victoria Cord pulled him out of the gutter and saved him, and then you find out what really happened exactly the way that you did, and then he turns and says, go protect your family. Like, I just think there was one little piece missing at the beginning that would have just like and by the way, I agree with everything you said. Like, I think it was still, it was a strong, I think his best moment is the end of that movie. I think the flashback, the scarab showing Jaime the flashback and him having the flashback and him turning and dragging Victoria Cord off. Like, I loved all of that.
Yeah.
I just think if you have that thing at the beginning where we understand that he believes that his family abandoned him and Victoria Cord saved him, and then learns the opposite, it would have made the whole moment at the end even more powerful than it was.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all on that one. All right, that's all the Streamlabs and Super Chats that we have, I think, that have come through. Yes? Yeah, that's everything. So, gentlemen, let's wrap up our review here as we're almost at 2 hours and almost the length of the movie. So, Michael, I go to you first. And anything we missed that you want to make sure we highlight as well in your final thoughts on Blue Beetle?
I don't think we missed anything, but I do think that I'm very happy that James Gunn and Peter Safran have kind of said that this is sort of a more or less the soft launch of the new DCU. We still have Aquaman coming, and that's just going to be what it's going to be. But once we get past Aquaman, we're sort of in a fresh, brave new world, and I'm glad that Jaime and his family are likely going to be a part of it. If something happens between now and then and they aren't, I will be very disappointed. Like, this is the first time in a long time that I came out of a DC movie really sort of charmed and enamored with what I saw and really wanting to see more despite the movie's weaknesses. Like, this is a piece of the DC universe that I really want to revisit and come back to. So I really I'm hopeful that we will.
Okay. Yeah. Shannon, your final thoughts on Blue Beetle?
You know what? One thing we didn't talk about was the action.
Yeah, sure. Oh God, yes, please. Yeah.
And to get some big screen Blue Beetle scarab effects, I mean, it was awesome. Like, they showed some really great stuff in the trailers. When his wings kind of, severed that bus in half, but also just watching the martial arts that he was using. I mean, it was just really, really fun. And watching a character discover the things that this entity can provide them. It was just a blast. And again, it made me want to go play Injustice 2 after we got out of the theater.
Well, Mortal Kombat 1 just dropped the trailer, Shannon. So just throwing that out there. If you want to find a new fighting game. Yeah, look, at the end of whatever this gimbal is going to do, fuck you. But at the end of the day, here's what I'll tell you about this movie. This, like I said at the beginning, I waited years, my whole life, to see a superhero movie led by a Latino character and to be from a big studio. I didn't anticipate Blue Beetle would be the choice, and it was first announced and going straight to HBO Max. I was like, all right, that's fine, we'll see. Batgirl going straight to HBO Max, we'll see. But the fact that this one survived and went theatrical and came out as well as it did, despite what a lot of people's reactions were to the trailers, to the news, to the casting, to everything, I thought it knocked it out of the park for what it was trying to do on the family side of things, on the Jaime Reyes side of things, and on the Blue Beetle side of things. I liked that it honored the mythology of Blue Beetles before, while also stating very firmly that this is a new Blue Beetle for this DC universe. So I enjoyed that, because we're still going to get Ted Kord at some point down the road. I don't know what version of Dan Garrett we'll get in terms of maybe repeating stuff, whatever, but I thought that was great. So overall, I thought it did what it was supposed to do, was to get you to fall in love with this character, want to see more from this character, and really flesh out this family in a way that wasn't stereotypical, in a way that wasn't just surface approach to respecting a Latino family. There was a lot of specificity amongst the generalities that I thought worked really well. And yes, the villain stuff isn't 100% there, but it's still a very fun time in the movie theater because this cast is so good and charming and funny. And in the end, you can't help but fall in love with the movie and with these characters and want to see more from them. So we'll see down the road what ends up happening with Blue Beetle and XOLO MARIDUEñA in the James Gunn universe. We shall see. All right, well, everybody, thanks so much for joining us here for this spoiler review of Blue Beetle here on the Geek Buddies. We appreciate it madly, and thanks to all the people who sent in Streamlabs and Super Chats and the very lively chat that we had here throughout. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media. On Twitter, it's @geek_buddies. On Instagram, at @the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's @Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you would like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is @MKToon. If you would like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is @The Rocha Says.
Mikey.
Well, if you enjoyed this lively chat on DC's latest entry into the DC universe and want us to continue talking about all the stuff that you love, here is what you can do for us. You can smash that like button below, subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page if you haven't already, leave your comments below. The comments in the chat were amazing. Keep your comments going and let us know what you thought of the review, what you thought of the movie, what you think of DC moving forward. What do you love? What do you hate? What are you excited about? What are you afraid about? If you are listening to us on a podcast, go ahead and leave us some comments and some stars so we go up in the rankings and more people can find us. And as always, the best thing you can do is retweet this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
Yes, well said, Mike, and well said, Shannon. And thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us. Now, go and watch Ahsoka and have a great time watching Ahsoka. And we will be doing our reviews of Ahsoka coming up real soon on the Geek Buddies as well. Until then, y'all take care of yourselves, be well, and we'll talk to you next time on the
Geek
Buddies!
Hey!